Well, welcome to another Friday night. We've been going through in our reparenting series a little bit on relationship stuff because it's such a big part of this reparenting process. And we've talked about the 8 A's that are the fundamental emotional needs that every person has. And then we've talked about using that as kind of dating criteria and what that would look like. And today I want to come to an issue that many people from complex trauma have when it comes to forming relationships. And it's a very troubling issue for them. And it would go under kind of the category of relationship addiction, or a new phrase or term that is used called limerence. And I want to talk about that today because to me it's such a practical issue that needs to be looked at. And it's really not fully understood unless you look at it in light of complex trauma. So let me begin by just defining what we mean by this whole limerence word. So limerence is the state of being infatuated or obsessed with another person. So it's typically experienced involuntarily, and it's characterized by this strong desire that when you meet this person that they will reciprocate your feelings. So it's not primarily about I want sex with them, it's that I want to be loved by them. Limerence means to have this intense longing for another person even though they might not fully reciprocate. So it's just this consuming longing. It becomes an obsession for the person. And so they struggle to think about anything else except this new crush. And for some, it can result in they neglect their social life, they neglect their work, other responsibilities, because they're now consumed by this obsession of this longing for somebody that they hope will love them back. What's begun to happen is they've defined 5 stages to limerence. So the first stage is called pre-limerence, and during this phase, so you don't even have a person in mind, you are just pre-meeting somebody. And so what characterizes it is you long to fall in love and be loved in return. That just is there all the time. And so you're always looking for somebody who might love you back. And you meet somebody and they show signs that maybe they might have an interest in you. Maybe they might reciprocate your love. So we're going to call them the object of limerence, or LO. And that is the pre-limerence. You meet somebody and they're nice to you, and all of a sudden you're fixated on them. And so it's not like you went choosing a partner, looking for a particular type of partner, but rather you go and you find somebody that shows an interest in you, and all of a sudden you're hooked. So that leads to the next phase, which is pre-reciprocity. So you're showing an interest in them, but they haven't had reciprocity. They're not showing it back. What I think is important, again, to emphasize here is that physical attraction might be an initial piece to this, but limerence isn't actually about wanting sex with a person as the focus. It's a desire for more than sex. And so what then happens is this person you meet, they are nice to you, they seem to show an interest, there seems to be reciprocity, but you're not sure. There's not clear reciprocation yet, there's just hints of possible reciprocation. And so what then happens is in this pre-reciprocity stage is that you now are constantly examining everything they say, everything they do, looking for a sign that they love you, that they're interested in you. And if you see a sign, then all of a sudden you're full of joy and excitement, and that just increases your longing for that person. But you're uncertain still. So it looked like a sign, but I'm not 100% sure that it was a sign. And so there's uncertainty, there's fear, there's self-doubt, do they like me or not is constantly going on in your mind. So it's a very torturous time where you're getting these growing longings. You're maybe seeing signs, but you're not certain. So then that goes to the next stage, which is reciprocity. There is clear evidence that they're interested in you. And that reciprocity phase is also called the infatuation phase. So now, wow, they are interested in me. And it's almost like an addiction begins. This person now is your drug. You can only think about them. That's all the time, 24 hours a day. You see them and your heart speeds up. You feel extra stress when you're around them, when you're away from them. You have anxiety all the time related to them. Your thoughts are all constantly being intruded by them. It becomes this consuming thing that just takes over your life. It's like it's uncontrollable, and you have this overwhelming desire for this person. So that's the infatuation stage. You're just feeding off the good oxytocin chemicals that are going on in your brain, and it's consuming you. That then leads to the next phase, which is called crystallization. And so you're kind of past the infatuation, and it's moving a little bit past that. But now what begins to happen is this person is really into me. This person really likes me. And so you then go to kind of this fantasy place where, okay, now this person's going to meet all my needs. This person, we're going to be happily ever after. This person is flawless. And you idealize this person. You create a fantasy world with this person. You put them on a pedestal. That's what begins to happen in this crystallization phase. So it's growing in your mind. How wonderful this is, not based on fact, but based on the feelings that you had in infatuation, that you are now creating this perfect person and a perfect relationship. Well, you can see that is not sustainable, and that is not based on fact, and so it leads to the final phase, the deterioration phase. And reality begins to sneak in that this person isn't perfect, this person isn't going to meet all my needs. I'm never going to have the person I was longing for, craving. And so all of a sudden this person drops off the pedestal. They're human. They've got flaws. They're not able to meet all your needs. There's disappointment in them. And so they can drop off the pedestal. You can turn against them, but you then go through the awareness, okay, this relationship's not going to happen. And you go through a time of loss. So what happens often in limerence is a person goes through these 5 phases, and then they go through this time of loss, then they meet somebody else, and it starts all over again. And it's just a cycle that repeats itself from one relationship to a next. So let me just summarize the characteristics of limerence. So consistent and intrusive thoughts about the object of limerence, or the LO. Then you idealize that person. They're perfect. They're flawless. You're constantly reminded of them everywhere you go, everybody you see, objects, situations. Doesn't matter what you experience, it somehow brings that object of limerence to your mind. Then you live with this intense fear that they're going to reject you, that they're going to abandon you, that they're going to see that you're not as great a catch as you hoped they would see you to be. And so there's a fear that's constantly there. And that results in fluctuations in moods. So if the object of limerence is giving you lots of love and attention, you're just soaring with excitement and feeling loved. But then if they're a little bit distant, or they're not giving you as much attention, then you begin, that fear takes over, and it's like a roller coaster. You crash, and you go, you're devastated that, what did I do wrong? Are they going to leave me? And it's just this roller coaster of fluctuating emotions. Then you can be very awkward and shy and clumsy around the object of limerence. You're self-conscious when you're with them. You don't want to do anything wrong. You're constantly insecure about, what are they thinking about me? You spend excessive amounts of time getting ready, grooming yourself before you go and meet them, because you want to look perfect. You want to impress them. And then you find that your preoccupation with the object of limerence is beginning to affect your work. It's beginning to affect your ability to concentrate. It's beginning to affect other relationships, your social life, even your hobbies you're not doing now because you're totally consumed by this relationship. And then the big piece to me is that there's this dependence emotionally on them. So your total emotional state rides on every little reaction they have to you. Is it good? Is it loving? Is it enough? Did they have excitement in their eyes? Were they really interested in me? Did they extend conversations? Everything is dependent on how they react. So you give them all the power over your emotions. So those are the characteristics of limerence. But what causes limerence? So I find it really interesting. The Attachment Project has put out this research, and it says this: insecure attachment, specifically anxious attachment, shares many similarities with limerence. Anxious attachment results from inconsistent caregiving during childhood, which gives the child and later the adult an unbalanced sense of security in relationships. So we've talked about this in other videos. This insecure attachment, the primary need of an infant is to attach securely. When that doesn't happen, insecure attachment happens, and one of the forms of that is anxious attachment. Then they say this: in relationships, someone with anxious attachment style experiences preoccupation with the relationship and their partner, is emotionally dependent on the partner, and has low self-esteem. They base their self-esteem on the approval and acceptance of others, which creates a strong fear of rejection and failure to please their partner. This is very similar to the profile of limerence, and thus, in many cases, it's likely that limerence stems from an anxious attachment style. So they're careful to say not in every case, but in many cases, limerence is nothing more than anxious attachment working itself out in relationships. So let me just take that a little bit farther and bring in kind of the complex trauma picture. What we see in complex trauma, because of that insecure attachment, is the child concludes, I'm not good enough. I must not be lovable or valuable. And so they have shame, this core belief that anybody that gets to know me isn't going to want to attach to me, isn't going to love me, isn't going to meet my needs because my caregivers didn't want to attach to me and meet my needs. And so they go into every relationship with that fear that anybody that gets to know me will reject me and not meet my needs and love me. That creates anxiety. That creates this up and down, giving all the power to the other person, that depending on how you treat me today is going to depend on how I feel emotionally, whether I'm excited, whether I'm devastated. And so when you bring together shame, complex trauma, attachment, but still this deep longing to be loved and to have my needs met, you end up with limerence. Somebody said this: the object of limerence is actually bringing me, by their presence and by their absence, into direct, avoidable contact with the extent of my neediness for the 8 A's. In other words, they're saying, limerence is actually showing how deeply I long to be loved. It is actually exposing my need for the 8 A's and how badly I long for those 8 A's to be met. Somebody else has said this: this is not about how much I need someone, but about how much I have abandoned myself. I use the image of the needed man to get me off the hook so I won't have to face the challenge of self-nurturance my only legitimate goal. In other words, in limerence, I am saying, I need somebody, but really, I've abandoned myself. I haven't learned to meet my own 8 A's. I haven't learned to love myself, and I'm putting all that on somebody else that they have to do that, and I'm becoming fixated on anybody that looks like they might do that, and that sets me up for emotional torture. When really, I've abandoned myself, and I need to learn to love myself and meet the 8 A's. And so the bottom line that I want you to hear from all of this is limerence is so common for people that come out of complex trauma. The path to healing is not to find the perfect person. The path to healing is to find healing for yourself, to heal the shame, to not abandon yourself, to build a relationship with yourself, to build a relationship with safe people that aren't in a romantic category. Then you begin to heal the attachment wounds. Then you begin to heal the shame, and the limerence begins to go away. And we've done other videos on that if you want to check them out. But that is such an important piece in understanding the healing for this limerence. Now let me cross over to kind of a kissing cousin of limerence, which would be relationship addiction. And many, again, who have come out of complex trauma would define themselves, diagnose themselves as being a relationship addict. They're addicted to being in a relationship. So let me explain that. It's a slightly bit different from limerence, but it's very much connected and they overlap. I think the best way to get us started is that when you look at relationship development, relationships tend to develop through 3 phases. We go through a romance stage, which is lots of really positive emotions and just seeing all the good things about a person. And then we go into starting to see reality with a person, which is a conflict stage. We're now getting to know them, we're working out differences, we're confronting issues that we don't like. And as we work through that and we both grow, change, accept each other, we come to the devotion stage. We settle in, and that's where true, deep love takes place, and it keeps deepening over the years. So that's the stages of development of a relationship. On first glance, relationship addiction looks exactly like the romance phase. We're so in love, the chemistry is there, we're feeling the oxytocin. It's an exciting phase, but there's a difference. In a healthy relationship, the romance phase is a temporary thing. We move past it, but we move past it into a conflict stage that leads even to a greater, deeper, satisfying love. What happens in a relationship addiction is I want to try to hang on to that romance phase, that chemical of oxytocin. I want to hang on to the crest of excitement. I want to ride that wave and always have it. And that's the difference. And that's how we would say it's an addiction. Because in a healthy relationship, the romance phase is there, but it moves on. Addiction, you're trying to hang on to this phase, but it actually ends up paralyzing us. Take that further. Because we're trying to hang on to this phase, what actually ends up happening is this phase never satisfies. Instead of moving to that satisfying stage of a relationship, we try to hang on to the excitement and the crest, and we end up dissatisfied. It's the law of diminishing returns. And that's the sad part is with addiction, enough is never enough. You always, I need more, I need another fix, but it never totally satisfies. But what, for many from complex trauma, makes the addiction relationship thing seem so attractive is not just the chemical and that excitement of feeling loved. It feels like unconditional love. No matter how they betray me, I will still love them. that just feels like true love, but it's addiction. I can't leave them even though they betray me. But because it feels like unconditional love, we think it is. Another way to look at this is, in a healthy relationship, there's that secure attachment that develops, a true healthy bonding. That doesn't happen in addiction relationship, a relationship addiction. What happens is you're kind of hooked to a feeling. And what's sad about all of that is, let me put it this way. In healthy relationship, you connect, but you don't over-attach. You don't become enmeshed. There's still autonomy there. And so what you begin to learn, you can only kind of possess, have a bond with somebody that does not possess you. And so with addictive relating, we don't bond, we over-attach, we enmesh, and it feels like bonding, but we never feel we're totally, truly, securely connected. There's always insecurity about it. So it's an irony. We try to over-attach to feel all of that bonding, and it makes it feel it even less. There's a second irony. Part of why we over-attach is we're looking for security in life. We're wanting to finally find that sense of safety and security. But by over-attaching, looking to one person alone to provide all my security, and basing all my security on how that one person responds to me, I actually lose security. I feel even more insecure. So what you see is relationship addiction gives the feelings of healthy relationships, but in an unhealthy way, and so it ends up backfiring. There's another interesting thing that comes out of relationship addiction. So two chemicals are released in relationship addiction. Oxytocin we've talked about, but also adrenaline. We get excited, we get pumped. We have all kinds of energy. What's fascinating is that oxytocin and adrenaline can get released when things are going good, but they also get released when things are going bad. And so you can have oxytocin and adrenaline release when things are going really well, but you can have oxytocin and adrenaline release when there's a fight, when the relationship is falling apart, when the person is threatening to leave. That releases oxytocin, that releases adrenaline. And so what I want you to see is that in a relationship addiction, you are getting the chemicals when things are good and when things are bad, when you're coming and when you're going, when it's getting good, when it's falling apart. And so we're hooked to the chemicals. And that means we're hooked even when we're breaking up. Then we want them back because we want the chemicals back. And so that's why for many people with relationship addiction, things go well, then they fight, then they break up, then they get back together. Then they fight, break up, get back together. Why? Because they keep chasing that chemical that comes when they're coming back together, when they're breaking up. They need to have drama in the relationship. I think it's important to say that in relationship addiction or sex addiction, it's never just one-sided. Often people think, okay, there's the person who comes on to the other person, who pursues the other person, who love bombs the other person. And so it's just a one-sided thing. It's all that person's fault that the other person got drawn into it. Now, I don't want this to be harsh in any way, but what I want you to understand is that the person, if they were really healthy, they would set boundaries and just resist that other person, and it would be done. Why does a person get drawn into that pursuit, to that love bombing? It's because there's this deep shame element, this deep longing to be loved because it hasn't happened properly in their biological family. And so they're vulnerable to somebody pursuing them, to giving them attention. But then what they find is, as that person pursues them, wow, they feel loved. They feel desired. The feelings they've been longing for, that feels good. But then they begin to feel they have a certain amount of control now over the other person as to whether they give and return affection to that other person. And they like that feeling of power. So now you've got three powerful things that have just stirred within them: the desire to be loved, that desire to be desired, and power because I can have some control over another person. And so that sets up relationships where there's seduction and withdrawal, chasing, pursuing, and then pulling away, all of that. So it's not just one person on the stage and the other person's the victim. It's a dance. And it's important to honestly look at that. There's another perspective I think that it's helpful to see. So in the 12-step programs like AA, they talk about a higher power, but they also talk about turning your will and your life over to a higher power in step 3. What I want you to see is in relationship addiction, what you do is you see the other person as your higher power. You turn your will and your life over to them. In other words, you go, I think you're the one who's going to meet all my needs. You're the one that's going to totally satisfy me. I see you as the answer to all my problems. I'm turning my will and my life over to you. I'm giving you power over me. And now I will put my needs aside. I'll put my desires aside. I will take care of you so that you will meet all of my needs. And so there's a turning oneself over, giving up control of yourself, hoping that the other person will totally satisfy. The sad part about that is you can spend years trying to do that, and then when you find the other person's not meeting your needs, then you try to change them. Then you try to fix them so that they will be the proper higher power to you. And years can pass as you do that. And what have you lost? Years where you could have been working on yourself, learning to meet your own needs, learning to take care of yourself and love yourself. And so you can go 10, 20 years and all of a sudden you're still back where you haven't met your own needs. No, you don't know how. You've been looking to somebody else. Nobody's ever done it. And you're back at square one. So let me give you this little comparison that I hope will help you. So on the left is the romance phase of relationship. On the right is addiction. So romance, it's a phase. Addiction, I try to make it ongoing. In the romance, there's the need, fulfillment is there. I want my needs met. I want to see if this person can meet my needs. But in addiction, there's a neediness. You have to meet all my needs. In the romance, it leads to the next stages, which is a sense of deep contentment. Addiction, it's a bottomless pit. It's never totally satisfied. In the romance, there's a desire for contact and connection, because that's what we're building and that's what we need in a healthy relationship. In addiction, there's desperation for contact. In the romance and healthy relationships, there's a proportional giving and taking, meeting each other's needs. In addiction, more is given. I'm going to give, less is received. In a healthy relationship, usually egalitarian, we're equals. In addiction, hierarchical. I see you as superior. I'm going to put my needs aside for your needs. Romance, healthy relationship, reciprocal. Give, and then I receive. Give, receive. Addiction, one-sided. Give. Healthy relationship has a future. It's going to build and grow and deepen. Addiction eventually backfires. It has no future of a healthy relationship. Healthy relationship that leads to feelings of deep satisfaction and joy. Addiction, feelings of not being able to get enough. Healthy relationship leads to a sense of security. Addiction, insecurity, always in doubt. Do they love me? Will they leave me? Healthy relationship, anticipation for the next meeting. Addiction, when you're away, it's just so painful, I can't tolerate it. I just need you all the time. So what are some signs of relationship addiction? And you can apply this to yourself and see if it's true of you. Love at first sight may be triggered by many things, but it's not love. It's important to understand that. And so if you're constantly a love at first sight person and that this is going to be forever, that could be a warning sign that there might be an addiction issue there. The reality is you might be attracted to somebody, but it takes a long time to develop genuine, deep love. Next sign is compulsive activity. So this could be sexual or romantic. You just want to have sex all the time to make sure they still love you. Or you just feel out of control. You're just constantly, do they love me? I can't relax. I can't relax. And that can lead to compulsive, I need to text them, I need to text them, I need to call them, or even spying on them, stalking them. That is a sign of addiction. Next one is using sex or relationship to cope with emptiness, depression, so anger, shame, anxiety. So anytime I'm feeling an unpleasant emotion I don't like, then I need a relationship or I need sex. I need something to make these emotions go away. Or using sex or romance to substitute for vulnerable, authentic intimacy. So instead of going through the hard work of being authentic and vulnerable and opening up gradually, let's just have sex. It gives the feelings of being really close. And that's where a lot of people will use love bombing, and yet they're emotionally unavailable. They just want to create the feelings in the other person of closeness, but they're not capable of true closeness. Next one is critical. Ignoring your partner's boundaries and abusing, controlling, or manipulating him or her, which includes people-pleasing or rescuing them. So whenever you do not respect their boundaries, that's a sign that it's not healthy. Something's not right there, and that could be relationship addiction stuff. Next one, so critical. Staying in a painful relationship. So you're being abused, neglected, cheated on, but you stay in it out of fear of abandonment or loneliness. It's not a sign of love. That's a sign of addiction. An inability to commit to a relationship or staying involved with somebody who's emotionally unavailable. Sign of a relationship addiction. Trusting too much or too little. Sacrificing your values and standards just so you don't lose that person. So you keep sacrificing and giving away more and more of yourself and what you believe just so you don't lose them. So those are important characteristics. Now let me end by sharing what Dan Newharth has done. He's given 25 differences between love addiction versus healthy love. And I'm just going to share it with you because I think it's very well done. It's quite complete, and I think it's just a helpful comparison to always have available to you. So love addiction, your relationship is driven by feeling incomplete or flawed without a partner. So when you're alone, there's this shame that you feel, but you might not even be aware of, but I'm not complete. I'm flawed. I need somebody. Healthy love, your relationship is based on feeling sufficient and whole with or without a partner. So I'm not getting in a relationship driven by, I need somebody. I'm getting in a relationship, I'm okay who I am, but I'm attracted to somebody and we add to each other. Next one, love addiction. Chemistry is the top priority in the beginning, whereas healthy love, chemistry is only one of several priorities. And those are the priorities we talked about last week when we look at the qualifications or characteristics that I'm looking for in a person. Third one, love addiction. You actually are falling in love with love or with oxytocin. In healthy love, you're falling in love with a person, and that's going to have ups and downs of emotions, and sometimes there's not a whole lot of oxytocin happening, but your love for the person is deepening. Fourth one, love addiction. Your relationship is based on who you want the other person to be. So you meet somebody, you're attracted to them, and you picture that I want them to be this way because then they're going to love me and meet my needs. Healthy love, you meet somebody and you want them to be who they are. You're not going to try to change them. You're not going to try to manipulate them subtly into being what you want them to be. Big difference. Number 5, in love addiction, your life becomes about the relationship. Everything else starts to kind of fall away because you're consumed with the relationship. It's your number one focus, takes your time. It's like an addiction. In healthy love, the relationship is part of the commitments of your life. It enhances your goals and your commitments for your life. 6, love addiction. You seek to rescue somebody or you seek to be rescued by somebody. Healthy love, you seek a relationship between equal, capable individuals. So love addiction, there's always going to be some superiority, inferiority. Number 7, love addiction, you fail to set healthy boundaries because you're afraid if you say no, they might reject you. Healthy love, you insist on healthy boundaries. So important. Number 8, love addiction. You look outward for another to fix, fill, or complete you. In healthy love, you've looked inward to fix yourself, to fill yourself. And now your love flows from the inside out based on that healthy core. Total different orientation. Next one. In love addiction, you may have one or more people lined up on the side just in case this relationship fails. Whereas in healthy love, you focus on the relationship without needing a replacement if it should end. Number 9, in love addiction, you find emotionally unavailable or abusive partners. And this one is so key. To me, it's a key characteristic of people that have love or relationship addiction is they come out of insecure attachment where parents weren't emotionally available to them. And so that's their template. And now they seek out people who are not emotionally available. And then they're frustrated by that. Whereas healthy love, you find as a priority somebody who's emotionally available who will treat you well. That is such a key difference. Number 10, love addiction, you idealize the other person, but the minute they start to expose flaws, then you devalue them. Healthy love, you have a balanced view of your partner's strengths and weaknesses. So it's like in addiction, they go from being on a pedestal to being knocked off a pedestal, from being perfect to being terrible. You never see them accurately, whereas in healthy love, the goal is to see them accurately, positives and negatives. Number 11, love addiction. Lots of fantasies, lots of obsessive thinking about the relationship. And all of that, when you look at it, is actually the fantasies allow me to avoid the emptiness within. They're my escape from emptiness, from not liking myself, from shame. Whereas healthy love, you already are healing the shame. You already have an active feeling of loving yourself and being okay with yourself in your daily thoughts because you're connecting with yourself and with others in healthy ways. So you don't need to be trying to escape any emptiness. Next one, love addiction. You may use excessively seductive behavior to attract or keep a partner. So they often form based on seduction sex. That's how you get an attraction. That's how you make it begin. Whereas healthy love, that's not how the basis of what this makes me think this is the greatest person in the world. It's those other characteristics we talked about last time. Sex then is an expression of authentic connection to your partner. It's not a way of trying to get them to like you. Next one, love addiction. You hide or ignore aspects of yourself or your partner that you fear would jeopardize the connection. So you never want to talk about anything that might cause conflict, that would cause the relationship to be jeopardized. So you start to keep all of that bottled up. Whereas healthy love, you accept parts of yourself and your partner that you don't like, and you strive towards awareness and transparency. You talk about them. Next one. In love addiction, you downplay your needs for fear of driving away your partner. So you never say, I need this, because they might get tired of you, see you as a burden, and leave you. Healthy love, you attend to your needs as well as your partner's, knowing that both must be met for a healthy relationship. So in a healthy relationship, you talk about needs from day one. It's not something to be avoided, because if this relationship's going to be healthy, you're both going to be able to meet your own needs and each other's needs in healthy ways. Next one, in love addiction, you have rapid and inappropriate self-disclosure in an attempt to feel extremely close. So in the very beginning, you just dump all of your information on them because you want to feel for certain that they love you. In healthy love, your self-disclosure deepens over time and as trust develops. It's a gradual process. So you live with some uncertainty and unknown as that process gradually develops, and you're okay with that. Next one. In love addiction, you ignore, deny, or tolerate dysfunctional behavior, loss of self-esteem, and self-sabotaging behavior to avoid losing the relationship. So hanging on the relationship is the number one priority, even if it means you have to tolerate wrong behavior, give up yourself. You can't lose the relationship. In healthy love, you know that healthy relationships can be difficult or painful and involve compromise, but you do not include self-sabotage or risky behaviors or starting to deny who I am and what my needs are. Next one, love addiction. You neglect life responsibilities to pursue the relationship and its dreams. In healthy love, you integrate your relationship with other responsibilities in a healthy balance. And so life and the relationship must go together in a healthy, balanced way. 18. You look to your relationship, this is love addiction, you look to your relationship or partner to make you feel whole, worthy, valuable, sufficient. So you give all that power to your partner to make you feel good about yourself. Whereas healthy love, your relationship is an expression of already feeling whole, worthy, valuable, and sufficient, and out of that you love the other person. 19. Love addiction. You feel your life would not be worth living without an intimate partner, because you'd feel so lonely, so empty, so awful. Whereas in healthy love, you know that many aspects of life combine to make life worth living. So life worth living is not just dependent on having a person in your life. Life worth living is dependent on all kinds of different things that you're working to include in your life. Number 20. In love addiction, you tolerate excessive dysfunction, chaos, or pain in relationship for fear of being alone. In healthy love, you do not tolerate excessive dysfunction, chaos, or pain. 21. In love addiction, you overlook warning signs and red flags for fear of being disappointed or left. In healthy love, you address warning signs to determine whether the relationship can be made healthier or whether you need to walk away from it then. 22. In love addiction, you often feel jealous, possessive, or a life or death quality of maintaining the relationship. Whereas in healthy love, you may feel some envy or jealousy at times, but they don't get to that obsessive extreme, I can't survive without this person. Next one. In love addiction, you believe you can only be happy and have your life work if you find the right person. It's all about finding the right person. Whereas in healthy love, you take responsibility for pursuing happiness, regardless of whether you're in a relationship or not. It's not dependent on finding another person. It's dependent on learning to take care of yourself. 24. In love addiction, you have a pattern of rarely being without a relationship. So as soon as you're done one, you're moving to another. In healthy love, you're able to tolerate being single if no appropriate partner is available. You're okay with just being by yourself. 25. Love addiction. You avoid assessing whether a partner is a healthy long-term match for fear of losing chemistry. So you don't want to look too closely at the relationship and how healthy the person is. Because if you look too closely, you might find something you don't like and then you might lose the relationship. So you ignore, you put blinders on, looking at things too honestly. Whereas healthy, you look deeply and think long-term, knowing that you deserve a healthy, long-lasting relationship. That's some really important stuff. So I really hope this helps you, because I know many of you struggle with this very difficult area. But let me just end by saying again, it goes back to the complex trauma, lack of attachment, shame, and that deep longing for love. You can begin to find that in non-romantic relationships. You can begin to heal. And so our LIFT course, our REACT programs are all about helping people begin to heal in these important areas so that these limerence, relationship addiction things aren't going to devastate them for the rest of their life. Well, that's the end of our Friday night. Again, I hope it was helpful to you. I hope you have a great weekend. And